Brent Porcio, TopVelocity.net. 3x pitch BioMetrics here of Tiger Adams from the 3x Velocity camp. Take him out of leg lift. Coming out of leg lift, extended front leg position. We can see here, if we look at the pelvis and trunk orientation, the hip is back 14 degrees and the trunk is forward 30. So, not really loading the posterior chain. You can see even the knee is starting to internally rotate. So, looks like a lot of quad loading instead of sitting back into the glutes more. If we look at the internal rotation of the drive leg, it's at 8 degrees. So, I wouldn't say it's like dramatic, but definitely not holding external rotation. Not a lot of even abduction in the hip, only 23 degrees of abduction. So, coming out of leg lift, just kind of quickly into the quads and wanting to let the front leg kind of take over at that point. So just got to work on sitting into more hip abduction, more external rotation, more counter rotation of the hips, and not going so quad dominant and just wanting to fly open pretty early. So into front foot strike here. Right here we can see sequencing. You can see going into that movement, not a lot of drive coming out of back leg, even hitting front foot without. It looks like still down on the rubber. If we look at the kinematic sequencing, the hips are peaking here, and glove sides peaking together. I like to see glove side, which is the blue line, peaking with the green line, which is the trunk. You can see arm cocking pretty late right here, where the hips are almost pretty much open. Shoulders are still staying closed at this point, but it would give it some decent hip to shoulder separation if you looked at it. As you can see, some decent hip to shoulder separation, but it's like when I look at hip to shoulder separation, to me, I want it to be a measurement of torque or energy coming up the chain. And in this one, because there wasn't a big drive in the back leg, and the arm's just cocking late, and he's working really hard not to pull glove side and hold that position, it's just not going to express a lot of energy, because it really isn't really transferring energy. It's just really kind of more of a positional thing. He's just trying to hold that posture, which is fine, but I like to see it as an explosive hip movement. The shoulders are being pulled back, and then there's a good amount of torque between the hips and shoulders, and there's a lot of energy that's going to be released at this point. I'm not feeling that. Same time too, you can look at the hip speeds here. The hip speed's peaking at 590 degrees per second, and then the trunk is going up to like 829 degrees per second, which is pretty slow. So it's not really expressing a lot of energy. And then the arm speeds kick in. The point is, I think Tiger's done a good job in understanding the kinematic sequencing of hip to trunk to arm, which we're seeing. It's just not in the early movements of the delivery through the force production, it's not explosive enough to really exaggerate or accelerate each segment. So we need to see the trunk speed and all of the arm speeds increasing through this movement. So at this point, good front leg stability, good shoulder abduction, external rotation. I think it might be a little excessive in contralateral tilt. We can see the trunk is 34 degrees, so it's pretty excessive. I don't want to go past 25. So the front leg swinging open was a more dominant movement than the back leg driving to the target. So the trunk just continues that, and you get this really big rotational trunk pulling off to pitch release. That's why with your forward trunk, you've only got 23 degrees of forward trunk. We're looking for something more like right here, 50 degrees at pitch release. Pitch release is probably right here, and we're half of that. Okay, so just going back to the drawing board and just focusing on getting lateral power. You're staying close to your front side, but if the back leg isn't going to generate the force towards the target explosive enough, you're still going to fly open, which you can see the front foot is pointing open, even though the position is trying to land in line or somewhat close. Front foot is still open. And like I said, you see the trunk taking that energy and more rotating than moving forward, even with a good front leg that's trying to drive and extend. So just a lack of lateral power, drive power, taking everything forward, hips explosively forward, driving trunk explosively forward. I think that's going to be the big key thing for Tiger, really amping up his velocity through this delivery.